there's a lot of things that ideally, if you are consistent with, it helps regulate all the systems of the body, which will help significantly aid with the peptides, thus to get the change that you want.
Yeah. And if you think that, oh, this sounds great, I'm going to use a sleep peptide, I'm going to get the best sleep of my life, I'm just going to use it from here on out. Again, sorry to say, there's no miracle for anything out there. So what you should be doing, like we always talk about, is practicing the very healthy sleep habits along with this. And yes, you're going to get great sleep.
Welcome to the Functional Code, your go-to source for decoding optimal health. Join Dr. Addy and Dr. Jace as they break down the science behind pain, performance, longevity, and more, making complex concepts easy for you to understand and apply in your life. Your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the Functional Code.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Functional Code. Today's episode is part 2 of our peptide series. We're talking sleep, anti-aging, healing, and skin. I know this is going to be a good one. I know a lot of women out there are probably going to be tuned in, which is going to be really fun, because I don't think a lot of individuals just understand how peptides can actually play into this realm. A lot of people, when they hear peptides, they maybe just think of usually growing muscle or more of the bodybuilder types, but there are so many peptides out there that can actually make changes in these parts of our health. So as always, I am Dr. Addy.
And I'm Dr. Jason. Yeah, super grateful to have Dr. Addy and his knowledge going at peptides and helping with all these other topics. I know if you guys were tuned in from last week's podcast on growth hormone, we dove into a few of these small topics. We're going to hit that even more in depth with different types of peptides, and we're going to give some other insights that can help out with other specifics with that too. So by all means, stay tuned. If you guys want to jump through and check out different parts of the podcast, by all means, it's in the description below, but you're going to get all the gems as you watch the whole thing through. So let's rock and roll. Let's dive into a few of these. So starting with sleep, that's where a lot of the tissue repairing comes into play. That's where also the body on a subconscious and more of a parasympathetic with rest and digest takes a place, which will improve the functions of a lot of the organ systems, the skeletal structure. But Doc, let's dive into some of the statistics with sleep. And if you don't get enough sleep with sleep deprivation, what are the scary things that could come up with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I jump in, I want to preface, if you want to learn more about the nitty-gritty of sleep, we did a great podcast where Doc really dove into the stages of sleep, kind of the things that we use as tools to improve sleep. So today we're not really going to get into that as much, but I do want to obviously preface just how important sleep is and just why we would want to affect that, obviously moving forward with like a sleep peptide. So 5 scary stats here about sleep deprivation. Number 1, just one night of sleep deprivation can impair mental functions equivalent to a blood alcohol concentration of 0.10, which is above the legal limit for driving in many places. That is scary. Like I didn't realize that.
I have no idea either.
And so again, it just shows to the extent of importance of why, proper sleep is absolutely needed. Number 2, chronic sleep deprivation is linked to a higher risk of depression, anxiety, other mood disorders, and it shows a bidirectional relationship between sleep and mental health. So again, if you're not feeling well, if you're not doing well, are you looking at your sleep? Are you getting sleep? Do you feel that you are more anxious, and do you feel like work has been too stressful and you're not getting the sleep you deserve? Instead of reaching for maybe a chemical pathway or reaching for help that way, look at just the act of sleep itself. It's to really help regulate a lot of those issues. So not to say it's the only reason why people have those issues, but it's something to think about, because I think there's a lot of people who are struggling with sleep. I want to say post-COVID, if you had COVID, up to 80% had a change in sleep patterns because of COVID. Now, whether that was the act of social change or the virus itself, I'm not sure. But it's scary to think that there are so many out there now still dealing with sleep issues from just COVID alone.
Or even just circadian rhythms. Everything's off. Like there's so many different things.
I'm not sure the link between all of that, but there are plenty of people out there struggling that way. Adults who get less than 7 hours of sleep per night are 30% more likely to be obese.
Wow.
Number 4, people who regularly sleep less than 6 hours are at a higher risk of heart disease, and studies show a significant link to high blood pressure and cardiovascular problems. Also, did you know, Doc, I know you're going to love this, obstructive sleep apnea is the cause of over 50% of AFib cases.
Makes sense, but I had no idea.
I didn't realize that obstruction, that change in the tissues when we snore, actually can cause different electrical outputs to our heart.
I wonder if that has something to do with more of the oxygen
It could be too,
there.
for sure.
A lot of
But I had no idea. I had no idea that actually was something that, because we obviously know through the vagal nerve and why nasal breathing, we talked all about that, but just at how that now can play into other things too, other than just our feeling of energy and cognition. It can actually affect the heart.
Wow.
And that's what was scary to me too. Lastly, chronic sleep deprivation is associated with insulin resistance, which I know we've talked on, just increasing the risk of type 2 diabetes. 5 nights of inadequate sleep can actually affect glucose metabolism. So here we are.
And going back to that first point with cognitive impairment, when you brought that up, I know when you drive for longer periods of time, especially truck drivers, and you start to like doze off, I definitely feel like that can affect driving cognitive skills and just awareness. And that makes sense. But in terms of alcohol concentration, comparatively, it's at
that much
0.1.
impairment. Yeah,
Like,
that's scary.
that is really scary.
Yeah.
And then, fascinating. With sleep apnea, I would not have thought that. That's cool. But man, okay. So we know that obviously sleep is going to be incredibly important. But Doc, what are 5 key things that need to happen to fall asleep?
Absolutely. And I think this is a great way for you to just get an understanding of why there's so many factors at play to get good sleep. So 5 things that need to happen for you to fall asleep. Number 1, your circadian rhythm needs to be influenced by light and dark, and it needs to be properly associated with when you fall asleep. Number 2, you need to produce melatonin as it gets dark. Roughly 1 hour before bed, your pineal gland will start to release melatonin, promote sleepiness. One thing that blocks that would be blue light, which is why we talk about shutting blue light off before bed. That's, the pathway. Your body temperature has to naturally drop as you prepare for sleep, which is a signal that you need to then fall asleep. And why we talk about sleeping in a colder room is a boost or enhancer of sleep. Relaxation response. Your body needs to enter a state of relaxation, which can reduce the heart and breathing rates. You talk a lot about yoga nidra and just how that before bed is so influential. Obviously, that's a huge part of that relaxation state. Chemicals like GABA promote sleepiness, inhibit wakefulness. So a lot of the other neurotransmitters that need to be released or have activity during this time needs to happen. And then lastly, you need to have what's called a sleep drive, which is a pressure to get to sleep. And that will build throughout the day, which can make you more tired. So I don't know if you've ever felt the difference when you maybe aren't doing as much during the day, maybe you nap, and then you start to go to bed and you're like, I'm really tired, because there was no drive. There was no sleep drive. But I know that there's plenty of you out there who work your butts off, maybe a manual labor job, or you're just heavily, heavily intense with your job, and you get home and you hit that pillow and you're out. That's the drive. You can create a drive for sleep, and that's actually going to help improve sleep.
And even going back to that point, for some people that it's hard for them to fall asleep, it almost sounds a little counteractive, but stay up longer until you feel that drive to fall asleep, and then go into it, and then slowly start to taper back based on your circadian rhythm. And when you wake up in the morning the next day, and try to tailor that back to more center will help. But man, that's good. I really like those points. And when you look at sleep, there's a mental side of things, like your mind's racing, like you're not feeling tired, or it could also be positional as well. We're talking more of the mental side of things and how that affects everything throughout the body, but everything plays hand in hand as a synergistic effect. So Doc, let's keep it rock and rolling. In the previous episode, we talked on peptides are enhancements. Where do sleep peptides play into this, and what's the impact of the process?
Yeah. So when you're looking at using let's just take a drug, for example, like a sleeping pill. The action of that chemical is to get you to fall asleep. Okay. Now, does that actually improve quality of sleep? Up for debate. Probably not. So, and it'll only make it harder and harder for you if your body is reliant on them, which is why they say not to rely on like a drug or sleep medication. And it's the same that goes with sleep peptides. So we still have a lot of information that we need to understand about sleep peptides, but it is, like you said, an enhancer. It can enhance sleep. I wouldn't rely on it as a sleep drug or a sleep medication. But if you want to improve sleep or even try to get yourself into a deeper sleep, there are sleep peptides that can actually help improve that. So the places that sleep peptides can impact would be, number one, the neurotransmitters in our body. So when we do sleep, neurotransmitters do have a change in activity. So we talk about serotonin a lot. Now, peptides can support the regulation of serotonin, which again is crucial for the production of melatonin, which is essential for initiating and maintaining deep sleep. However, with serotonin, it's another neurotransmitter on top of melatonin that has actually changed as we sleep and is helpful for the brain. Number two, by promoting a healthy and consistent circadian rhythm like we talked about, melatonin can again help address all of that. And there are phases of sleep where melatonin is more secreted, such as stages of deeper sleep. Mm-hmm. And that's where the peptides have an impact on. And of course, when we enhance stage 3, that's what's vital for tissue repair and memory. Again, that's the kind of stage that peptides can possibly have an effect on. And you can get a lot deeper sleep with these peptides, but it might affect different stages of your sleep too. And so we're still trying to understand that. So just, obviously we want to have caution with that. And then lastly, we just know that there are correlative effects of using sleep peptides for enhancing sleep quality overall. But again, there's some more research that needs to be done on the true effects of using different peptides across the board.
Absolutely. So the peptides are actually improving different aspects and physiological responses to people. So when you go through this, much like we said in the previous podcast, you would want to make sure that you go through and know certain hormone and chemical levels before introducing some of these peptides, and obviously follow a physician that can help monitor this on a deeper level. But there's a lot of stuff to take in consideration. So paying attention for your interoception of when you go into sleep, are there certain things that you can realize and recognize that is it harder for you to turn your brain off? What does your sleep schedule look like? Is it some days I go to bed at 9, some days it's 1 a.m.?
Yeah.
What's that fluidity throughout your typical week? And then are there other factors in play? Does your spouse or significant other or family member work nights and they come home, and does that disrupt your sleep cycles? And can you change things up? So there's other variabilities, but when you look at your process and your system, there's a lot of things that ideally, if you are consistent with, it helps regulate all the systems of the body, which will help significantly aid with the peptides, thus to get the change that you want.
Yeah. And if you think that, oh, this sounds great, I'm going to use a sleep peptide, I'm going to get the best sleep of my life, I'm just going to use it from here on out. Again, sorry to say, there's no miracle for anything out there. So what you should be doing, like we always talk about, is practicing the very healthy sleep habits along with this. And yes, you're going to get great sleep. But if you eat like crap and you are on a screen the entire day and you don't practice other healthy sleep habits, you don't meditate, all those things, again, it's not just going to be a substitute for those poor habits. You got to do the work before you can get the full result. It's not just going to replace that.
Absolutely. So I know people are dying. What are peptides? I know there's a top 3 that I know we want to go into, but let's dive into those and how are they being used right now?
Yeah, for sure. So the 3 that I think I hear most providers and users of peptides talk about is, number 1 is DSIP. It's delta sleep inducing peptide. And I'll get to just in a little bit about what that peptide looks like and what it does. The second one is Ipamorelin or CJC-1295, which are growth hormone secretagogues. And we talked about his last podcast just on how when you can increase growth hormone, it's a part of improving sleep or inducing deeper sleep. And then the third would be Ipamorelin. And Ipamorelin can change the output of epithylamine, which again is used in inducing sleep. And again, we'll kind of get to that further down the road here.
Oh, that's beautiful. So in terms of DSIP and how it can enhance the body, and I know we've had a patient that we've helped guide to utilize this to help with that individual's sleep patterns. So Doc, if you want to dive into any specific that.
Yeah. So really the way that DSIP works is it enhances your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. And it can help actually reduce the frequency of waking up in the middle of the night. So the reason why it's called delta sleep inducing peptide is exactly in the name. It looks to try to create more delta waves when we sleep. And that delta wave is created more in the deep stages of sleep, deeper sleep stages. So when you have the introduction of DSIP, which is a peptide in our body, we have, it's just in a amino acid created form in the lab, you ingest. And as you ingest that, the body then looks to try to use that as a signal to try to get deeper stages of sleep. So with any peptide, you take a look at what it is versus what it is in your body. And just as general, peptides created in like a compounding pharmacy or just, technically using natural compounds, amino acids, right? It looks as close to as they can make it, but it isn't human DSIP. It's just as close as they can make it. So the goal is to use this property, this peptide, and as you ingest it, the body then gets, I think that's DSIP, as a signal, and that's what then promotes all of those sleep-wake cycle changes.
So timing matters then.
For sure.
Yep. Then. Okay.
Yes, timing will matter.
Okay.
And there are, like we talked about before, many other things that impact sleep. Like DSIP isn't just the one primary driver of sleep. But what they found is, and I'll get to that in a little bit here, is when they introduced this into patients who really struggled with sleep, it did help them. So it can be used, absolutely. It's just a matter of what other things are you doing on top of that to enhance your sleep. Mm-hmm. So some of the things, this was published in the Journal of Springer. It just showed the effects of DSIP on insomniacs. There were no daytime sedation or other side effects when taking DSIP, so you weren't groggy when you woke up. They also found that the sleep-promoting effects occurred only in the second hour after injection, while the first hour indicated a slight arousing effect. Overall, the findings showed that DSIP had a normalizing influence on sleep regulation. And so these patients were getting deeper sleep, higher quality sleep with fewer interruptions, and they were actually getting slightly longer REM sleep. And these patients were insomniacs, had a difficult time falling asleep, staying asleep, those kinds of things. I even believe that their duration of sleep improved as well. So we do know, and we are seeing changes when using this peptide on patients who have struggle sleeping. The second one, well, this was 16 patients. I think the last study was 6. But 16 patients, again, this was a double-blind matched parallel group design, very high quality. Not a lot of patients, but still a very good study. And it showed these patients spent 5 consecutive nights in a laboratory setting. And the first night was tried to adapt to their surrounding. And then the second was used to kind of get a baseline. And then the rest were studied for actual stages of sleep. So on the afternoons preceding the third, fourth, and fifth nights, half of the patients received intravenous injection of DSIP, while half received glucose, just a standard glucose solution as a placebo. Now, what they found was the DSIP group experienced higher sleep efficiency, shorter sleep latency compared to the placebo, and it showed that the DSIP group had more effective improvement in sleep duration and quality compared to the placebo group, and they actually showed a decrease in tiredness in the DSIP group. So, why is that important? Well, we can see that patients who have a tough time getting to deeper stages of sleep, this might actually be more effective for them versus someone who maybe just wants to use it as a sleep enhancer. Now, it's not that you can't use it as a sleep enhancer, but for those who are really struggling, this might actually be an option for them.
Beautiful.
And for those who want to really hone and dial in their sleep 100% and they don't have insomnia, we don't quite know the long-term effects or the changes in cycles using DSIP. So it might be something to think about before using. But for those who are just trying to get anything, heck yeah, I think this could be a great first step versus, trying to rely on sleep medication, which can have harsher side effects, obviously.
It makes sense too. And I know people, originally when I heard this, like in terms of a study of 6 people versus 16, like if you think about this, you have to constrain so many variables. And then people naturally, if you're going to be in a laboratory setting for 6 days in a row for one of these, like you have to consider work and life and family. So just even finding the patients to do this on would be incredibly difficult. So just the fact that we have positive signs of results for this literature is incredibly promising, and all things considered for DSIP.
And the fact that they got better sleeping in a lab versus at home. It was interesting to see that they even had positive effects from that too, because I can't imagine there wasn't maybe some eeriness or feeling of uncomfortability not having that normal setting that you're used to. Of course, sleep is a very routine habit. So, but yeah, it was super interesting.
Fascinating. So, and I know we touched on this in the previous podcast, Ipamorelin or CJC. Now, this has to play with more of the growth hormone aspect of things. So, Doc, let's dive into this. And I know we've touched on this prior too, but how does this Ipamorelin also improve sleep?
Yeah. So you have Ipamorelin, which is a growth hormone peptide. There's some other ones that I know you guys have heard, like CJC-1295 or Tesamorelin, Sermorelin, MK677, all of these peptides. So Ipamorelin acts on the ghrelin receptor. And so when ghrelin is secreted, that is a pathway to actually increase more growth hormone. So I have a study where they gave patients Ipamorelin versus a placebo and measured sleep and hormone levels, and it showed the Ipamorelin group had increased GH and the increase in HCH levels, but Ipamorelin increased stage 2 sleep duration, and it did not change the sleep-wake cycle. And so we're seeing that it can help be a helpful additive to your sleep routine without actually changing a lot of the cycles that happen during sleep itself. And there's definitely more research that needs to be done, but it's safe enough to where there's not a lot of side effects with Ipamorelin, and I think a lot of patients can find the benefits with this peptide, giving this a try just to see if they can get some deeper quality sleep.
That's beautiful. So the one thing I thought was interesting was the aspect of you feel more energetic when waking, and obviously if that is the case, then maybe people don't have to rely on coffee or these stimulants in the early part of the day, which can throw off many other receptors throughout the body.
For sure.
So it can almost start a whole cascade of improving your whole function throughout your everyday process.
For sure.
Which I think is incredibly important. That just even looking from that side of things will have a huge effect on a person's well-being.
Yeah.
So that's.
And I know a lot of caffeine addicts out there are looking for help.
Yeah.
Because they're so reliant on it, and especially with the society that we live in, very fast paced, needing to perform, needing to be efficient. What a better night's rest of sleep can do for someone, just like you said, makes a difference.
Is there another one that you brought up? Is it called like Epitalon?
Yeah, so Ipamorelin is the last one that I kind of brought up. I do know that they've studied it for a few things. But one of the first things that it's used for is an anti-aging peptide. It just has this property that helps to improve longevity. But it's a synthetic peptide that mimics the natural compound called epithalin found in the pineal gland. And epithalin is produced to influence the secretion of melatonin, which we talked about is the hormone that regulates the sleep-wake cycles and getting you to sleep. So that's where the Epitalon connection kind of comes in when it comes to this process in sleep. So like we talked about, it does have a anti-aging type of effect. It's known to increase the production of telomeres, which we talked about, which are vital for cell growth, longevity, regeneration. But again, recent studies suggest that it can regulate melatonin, enhancing that sleep quality. it even is found in older adults. Epitalon promotes melatonin production and release, leading to deeper sleep. That was a study that was done, but people don't understand that older adults, even past the age of like 60 or 70, actually don't even have those stages anymore in their sleep. They don't even get to those stages anymore. And it's just because I think as senescence kicks in and we just start to lose our ability to have those kinds of things happen, that's where these things might be a great way to boost things that we maybe don't have as we get older. So studies that looked into this, they looked at 55 elderly patients that had decreased melatonin synthesis due to a pineal gland or dysfunction. And so they studied whether the dose of Epitalon did anything to these patients. And it actually showed almost a 1.9 times increase in melatonin compared to the untreated patients. And so there was a similar effect observed in this drug called, it was a medical drug, and it did help restore melatonin levels in humans and in animals. So the drug itself, I believe, had a tie to this compound. And that's where they were starting to look into why Epitalon would be something that would help improve sleep production.
So with Ipamorelin, and kind of like what you're saying, obviously with people not getting the REM sleep, not getting the later stage of sleep, and that it can help with that, even for like the telomere length. In the back of my mind, and some of this is more like hypothesis more than anything else, but let's say you get to a certain biological age throughout your life, and now it's something that a physician or yourself can start thinking about. This might be, obviously with more research, but this might be something that'd be beneficial for potentially most people as they age, to help for the longevity and for the health and the sleep function.
Exactly.
So it's just specific time in someone's life, or unless they have a condition to where they don't produce enough melatonin, which can throw off a bunch of different things with that.
And why so many people, down melatonin right now as a exogenous form of sleep aid versus trying to get your body to regulate itself. And maybe if that's a more effective way, I don't know. But I like that you brought up, as we get older, it makes sense that if we aren't sleeping as well as we get older, or we don't have the effective stages of sleep happening, then it does make sense that we're not getting, proper telomere length. And we're seeing that as a direct marker of longevity, and why so many people measure telomere length as longevity. So I was watching this video the other day explaining how if you live to 2050, you will get to an era where we're going to reverse aging and death. And I think it's a funny hypothesis, but we're getting closer and closer to that every day. And I'm starting to see researchers truly dive into this. We are reversing cellular death and aging in the laboratory setting. We are literally regrowing things, preventing death, reversing cell death in a lot of these studies. Obviously, these are, cultured cells, but we're going to eventually figure out a way to create that into humans. And if anything, I remember who I was talking to the other day, but there will be a time where, I think it might have been you talking about how we will be able to literally delete all cancer. Was that you talking about that?
Yeah. It's Neil deGrasse.
Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, him?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he brought up the fact, because I was curious on the name, because I couldn't remember it, of course. So he brought up his hypothesis of what the research and what our predictions when it comes to 2050. And I mean, that's 26 years away. We're at 2024, and we're at this stage with the technology, with more people interested in some of these other fields, and us learning more about the whole body and system. I think based on the trajectory, I think it's absolutely possible. And hypothesizing, if you reach a certain age, that we'll have enough research and we'll have enough tangible tools to help person improve the lifespan long term for a lot of people. So I mean, that's interesting. And going back to his hypothesis and prediction that most diseases of cancer and of autoimmune diseases will have some sort of an answer for it, to where it'll completely wipe that out.
That's crazy.
that's a whole, from people, just their lives itself with that.
And
Unreal.
what that would do to the, just the overall quality of life and happiness of the world. Yeah, it's crazy to think about, but
That is awesome.
yeah, that is Ipamorelin. I wish I knew more. I really don't. I'm still learning a little more about all these peptides myself, but I know that was one of the last ones they have used just to try to improve sleep.
I love that. And now let's switch things up a little bit. Now go into skin care and then even collagen production. What are the 5 alarming facts about collagen production?
Right. So 5 alarming facts about collagen production. So number 1, collagen production significantly decreases with age, starting around 25. Those 25-year-olds out there, it's okay. We'll be fine. By age 50, the body may produce 30% less collagen, which can lead to wrinkles and why sagging skin can happen. So we understand the senescence patterns of these properties. And what are ways, obviously, that we can impact that? We're going to talk about in a little bit. But number 2, stress can cause an increase in cortisol, which negatively affects collagen production. There is a reason why we talk about managing stress. Tons of reasons why we talk about managing stress, but this can be one of them, is it does reduce your ability to promote collagen synthesis, and that can change how your skin looks and the health of the skin. So nutritional deficiencies, things like vitamin C, zinc, amino acids, if you do not have them in your diet, can impair collagen synthesis. I know we learned about vitamin C a lot in school and how that directly ties to collagen synthesis itself. But yes, poor diets, I mean, it sounds a lot kind of simple and logical, but there are reasons why people talk about this so much, because it does have direct effects to everything you want, all the things you want in your health. Exactly. UV rays of sunlight breaks down collagen fibers, leading to accelerated aging. And it says that up to 80% of visible skin aging is actually attributed to the sun. So when we're talking about truly one of the primary drivers of the breakdown of skin health, it is going to be prevention of sunburn and sun damage to your skin. That's going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest.
Which we see that in people that are outside for longer periods of time.
But really, and I'll get to this in a little bit, one of the reasons they believe that skin cancer actually forms is because of the burn. The burn is actually the damage that happens to the skin. Now, if you can prevent the burn, if you can prevent the skin getting that far damage, then you're going to have a better chance of sun tanning in a more healthy way. And so making sure that you think about that before you go and tan for 3-4 hours. Now, some of you maybe are more tan and can do that, but there are better ways to tan. And so doing that over time in more of a modest way is the better way to do it versus I'm looking a little pale. I got a trip coming up. I'm going to just hit it hard every day for hours and we'll see what happens. Ultimately, that's what's going to be causing more of the issues. So just, food for thought. But lastly, genetics can play into the production of collagen, but that's one that's obviously we can't impact as much as we want to. So
good point. So are there specific peptides for the most part, skin enhancement and skin health?
Absolutely. And there's some that's more direct than others. Some have more of an indirect effect. Some maybe have more of a direct effect. But the 3 that I've been studying and following and even using include GHK-CU, which is a copper peptide. The second is Ipamorelin, and the third is Melanotan 2. So I'm sure most women have heard of copper peptides or GHK-CU. It's in almost every skin serum. So yeah, for sure. It's one of the largest used peptides that we actually didn't even understand. But GHK-CU copper peptide, absolutely very helpful for improving skin health, and I can kind of jump right into that. So when you administrate copper peptide into the skin, it shows it can help regenerate and protect parts of the skin, including the ability to activate tissue remodeling. It can reverse even age-related skin thinning or signs of ages, and it actually helps repair what are called skin barrier proteins. And these are just used for protection, remodeling, and making your skin, having that more thicker protected layer.
Mhm.
And
As I know you was brought up, wound healing. Anytime there's bruising or contusions, that's usually a tissue damage that we can see as a bruise on our skin, but deep down, you can almost think like there's either damage or possibly even scars underneath the skin, and they helping with that. So I'm thinking of either tissue specific or layer specific tissue. Think about from regeneration and healing perspective.
Yeah. And I'm not sure as far as application of GHK-CU, what is the standard right now. The gold standard is topical, and most do topical. You can inject it subcutaneously,
Like locally or systemic.
it would be systemic.
Okay.
The injection would. You can kind of put it in a few areas, but systemically it does have an effect. The only thing with GHK-CU is the injection in about 50% of patients. It has a burning effect. It burns going in.
Sure.
It doesn't last long, but that is one of the side effects that I know a lot of patients who are using it kind of just note when they're using it that way. But you can still absolutely use it in a topical form, and it can help repair skin and make it look obviously more vibrant and young. But things about peptides is peptides are in our bodies. Like, you don't have to take them, they're here. But GHK, the peptide, naturally declines with age. And so we have seen with research that roughly 200 ng per mil of GHK-CU at age 20. So just to make this very simple, let's just put a number on what's high and good and normal. So GHK-CU, if we measure it, we'll call it 200. And that's age 20. When we get to age 60, it's at 80. Through some of the studies that they've shown. So that's well over half it reduces by. And so when we have seen the reduction of this copper peptide, it doesn't allow for this, what we would call like a reset of these human cells to a healthier state, which then is now leading to more breakthroughs in a copper peptide being used for like wound healing and regeneration. And that's where this is starting to kind of push forward. Obviously, this peptide is billions of dollars is being used for the skin health, skincare side of things. But there are other things that GHK-CU is being seen in studies and used for, such as, so wound healing would be one. Some studies have shown that it actually improved healing rates of patients with diabetic ulcers. So they're looking into that. It has anti-aging effects. Obviously, we talked about the skin portion of things, but for women out there listening, this was a good study to show why you might want to introduce a GHK-CU cream into your skincare routine. But 12-week study with 67 women showed that when they introduced GHK-CU cream, it actually reduced wrinkles, increased skin thickness, and in comparison, it outperformed vitamin C serums and retinoic acid, which is another common, more harsher product that a lot of people use to try to boost collagen and minimize fine lines. So if you're going to look into that in this study, a better outcome than the latter. The last few that I had on copper peptide was, talked about how it enhances collagen synthesis. It can help suppress free radicals in the body, which again cause cellular damage. It can increase protein synthesis, which is actually where you talk about collagen peptides. There's even like beef collagen peptides that I know are being used in the muscle building world, where people can get their protein from that source. And obviously the indirect effect of using that source is better skin and joint health.
No, casein is one, like that type of protein is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
GHK-CU showed potential anti-tumor effects. I don't want to get into too much of that. And then lastly, it did have the ability to regenerate nerves in one study, specifically Schwann cells, which are more of the peripheral nerve function repair. So yeah, it's got other properties other than just skin health, but that is one that if you want to get started, you can probably get that in most skin serums, or if you wanted to just look online and find a GHK-CU product, it wouldn't be very difficult to do.
Shoot, maybe that was what was in the shampoo conditioner peptides.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Oh, it might be. It could be.
I gotta go look now.
Other peptides involved. There's quite a bit, but yeah, I would be curious to know which ones. But that's definitely going to be probably one of the top ones.
Which, I mean, makes a lot of sense too. Let's go to Ipamorelin. And I know we've touched on this previously before, but Doc, how does that improve all aspects of whether it's muscle growth, whether it's body function? What's your thought process?
Yeah, and Ipamorelin is a great peptide. We talked a lot about it on our last podcast, as far as the muscle boosting and tissue growth kind of avenue. So if you want to learn more about that, go ahead and circle back to that podcast. But really, what they were starting to see with these patients that were on Ipamorelin was this vibrance and better skin, and they were curious why. And so a lot of the people that are hypothesizing why Ipamorelin is helping in this pathway kind of comes from, I guess, these reasons here. So when you have increased muscle mass from, GH peptides, again, it enhances blood circulation, delivers oxygen and nutrients to skin cells, which again is going to promote vitality.
Mm-hmm.
When you have more blood flow, it's going to aid in repair and regeneration, of course, as any tissue, as long as we have more blood flow, including skin tissue. When we have a larger muscle mass, it helps to support those underlying skin structures, helps to prevent sagging. It can also even lead to like a more firmer appearance, even like a healthier complexion. So that just kind of, again, is an indirect effect. Now, collagen, like we talked about, plays a key role in all of this, but there is some research showing that Ipamorelin can stimulate collagen synthesis, which again is going to improve, skin elasticity and make you look younger. So, with the enhanced collagen production, that's where Ipamorelin has somewhat of a tie to. They're still trying to understand it. But I think the main reasons is because you are looking toner, you have healthier blood flow, skin, tissue, all of those kinds of things. That's where it's almost like a precursor to, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to take care of yourself, lift weights, feel young, look young, that's going to really be the indirect effect versus putting it straight onto the skin and getting the effect. That's where Ipamorelin may be a little different.
So, Doc, go from Ipamorelin, and I know there's another one that we brought up. We talked about this a little bit. Melanotan, I know there's 1, 2. What is that, and does that help with some of the things that we're talking about today?
Yeah, so Melanotan is one that I know a lot of people have been looking for because it had been introduced as the next biggest peptide, and it was because it makes you tan and it helps you lose weight. And
that's
there. That's probably what 90% of the population are looking to do that. So you take a look at the differences between all of the melanotans. And melanotan, there's 5 of them. The main ones that are being used is melanotan 1 and melanotan 2. So taking a look at melanotan 1, it can help you more naturally create this melanin production, which again, when you have more melanin in the skin, it gives it a darker appearance. So on top of just looking like you're more tan, it does actually have a effect on enhancing consciousness. So the individuals that I've been looking at, studying and learning from, they talk about how it's one of their favorite peptides for inducing theta brain waves, which is associated with relaxation, creativity, and deep meditation. So it's almost like one of the gentlemen that I follow, he talks about it. His name's Jay Campbell. No secret. I'm not like I'm keeping this from everybody, but it's funny because he says, before I go to the beach, I do melanotan 1, which helps me prevent sun damage. It has skin protective effects, melanotan does, and it's great at protecting UV damage.
And that's melanotan 1, right?
Melanotan 1. Well, both of them do, but ultimately that's one of the pathways. Okay. But secondly, he goes, I go and have one of the greatest days at the beach because I'm looking to relax, and it actually helps me enhance that. He also uses melanotan 2 for his creative spaces when he's trying to get more creative, and he finds that to be helpful. I mean, I thought that was really cool that this peptide that kind of activates the melanocortin system also can help with this change in consciousness. And so, when you think about it though, like grounding, we've talked about that. You got to get outside. I don't know how many times you've talked about on the pod, just getting that circadian rhythm, that the nucleus that you had talked about.
Suprachiasmatic.
There we go. Yes. And just how even seeing sunlight can get you kind of reset, grounded. And I think maybe that also, this peptide has a tie into kind of that process too. I don't know, but it's so interesting to hear that this peptide has, this appetite suppression part, the tanning part, and then this enhancement of consciousness. It's really interesting. And the only problem is it's very difficult to get these peptides. So eventually I'm hoping that it's a lot easier, because I would love to try these myself.
Same.
And I know you can get them some places. It's just a little more difficult. But going on to Melanotan 2, this is the one that makes your skin look a little darker. And it might even change the hue of your skin color. And some patients like it, some patients don't. So some, again, will use it for specifically trying to darken the skin, get it tanner. The other reason is this one actually can improve ED and low libido in men and women. And so you have Melanotan 2 now, which has the tanning portion of it, but it is a huge libido booster.
That's huge.
And so all of these, it's crazy to think that when we're seeing the research that peptides have these direct effects, but they're also having these indirect effects. It's so interesting. So you have libido enhancement. It's an appetite suppressant like we talked about, and it really helps to improve the darkness of your skin. Other side kind of things that it may have, and this is kind of a offshoot, but can have some neuroprotective properties. Again, that's kind of a little bit of a long shot, but the last one is there is some research showing it can combat opiate and ethanol addiction or alcohol addiction by producing melanocortins, which melanocortins then can help decrease tolerance.
I never thought about that.
Again, that's obviously way more research that needs to be done. But again, there's 5 melanotans. These are the most 2 common ones, but super cool to look into with all of these things that they can cause.
Say, Doc, because I know you said increasing the darkness of the skin.
Yes.
So let's take into consideration African American or darker skin complex of a person. Let's say they're already more darker than Caucasian individuals. Have they looked into the research for those individuals?
I don't think so. If there are patients that have used it, I'm curious. I don't hear a lot of very dark skinned folk using this peptide.
Okay.
It's definitely more of pale folk who are trying to help improve their resistance to damaging UV rays, which pale skin obviously has that issue. So Jace, the gentleman that I'm about to talk about, who I kind of just mentioned, he said that using this peptide over the years has actually permanently changed his skin tone.
Wow. And
he does feel that, and if you look at him, he's a very tan individual. He does feel that it has, with Melanotan 2, he never would have gotten to that point. He felt he would have had more damaging effects aesthetically, because he feels that there aren't as many blemishes, such as he was mentioning to a friend of his who tans all the time and has, sunspots and all these other things. And so when you take a look at it, if you have a slightly darker complexion, there might be more of a benefit to you because you already have more melanin in your skin. And it might be a little more difficult if you're more pale just starting out. But to the extent of which, kind of hypothetical, very tough to understand still without the good proper research. But if I were to use it myself, I definitely would use it in a way of protecting myself from the sun. So anytime, that would be my sunscreen.
especially in the
That's my
desert.
sunscreen. I would inject that before I go into the sun. I don't want to put the sunscreen on because obviously we know how harsh sunscreen is to our body, all of the cancer promoting properties that it has. And if that is just the way that you can very naturally use your body's properties to increase melanin production, protect yourself from the damaging rays, you're getting tanner because of that. You can go longer maybe without getting burnt. And then all the other interesting side effects, enhancements that you get using these products too. It definitely intrigues me on wanting to get started.
That's crazy. From like appetite to even like libido
Yeah.
and like sexual performance, whatever you want to call it. Like this is definitely the one that most people I feel
Oh,
go
yeah.
on. Like,
Yeah. And it makes sense that it's so limited.
yes.
I mean,
So
who's at play, right? Who
Mhm.
are the ones behind the scenes making this difficult to get? I don't know.
Is it making the compound or having a
I-
biological play to make it?
I think so, because Jay was talking about how he used to buy 10 vials of this at a time
Mhm.
for $10 each. I mean, like he said, this was easy to get.
How long does each vial last for?
Most vials you use on a regular basis of either weekly or monthly.
Okay.
So with Melanotan, I'd have to look at the dosaging, but you probably for one vial would get anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks out of it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's most vials. Most peptide vials, you get about 2 to 4 weeks,
Okay.
just depending on the peptide. So again, it's just such a great natural way to get those effects without needing the more harsher chemicals like a sunscreen. And I mean, we talk about just the side effects of using Viagra Cialis for those patients too. And the precautions if you have heart issues using those kinds of medications too. Yeah, it's really interesting. I can't wait for the production of this peptide to be more widestream. And I would love for all of these peptides to have as many people using them as like Ozempic and other peptide drugs. You know, once Ozempic took off, we were able to gather this amount of information in like a year or two. I mean, we were getting 16 to 20,000 participants in these studies in 2 years. That is enough for us to really gain an understanding on how to use these things. It doesn't take long. And they're safe. I mean, you know, GLPs are incredibly safe. You know, there are some worries that a lot of people are having. I know we're going to be coming out with a podcast on weight loss peptides, which I know a lot of you, I'm sure, are going to be very interested in listening to. That's going to be a big one. But yeah, I think really to end it, it's knowing that the way that maybe peptides are being looked at or spoken about in the media or even by government agencies, you hear a lot of the scary words that they're throwing around, like being banned and all of that. And really what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a more organized system around these products. And I'm all for regulations when it comes to that, but it's not very difficult to create these products. And the problem is from all the things we've talked about, they create so many good positive effects in humans. And that means
used the right way.
If used the right way, correct. And it's going to rival medications, drugs. That's where it's starting to have issues because you used to be able to, I remember I started working with peptides over 5 to 6 years ago, and we could get any peptide we wanted. It was like a catalog. Literally, you had like 50 to 100 peptides you could just choose from. Now, I didn't know anything about them when I first started. There were so many peptides, and there's still so many peptides out there. So I'm really just sticking to the ones that I'm going to, work with patients first. But the crazy part is you could get all of these anytime you wanted. And now there is almost, if not any peptides available in these pharmacies because they have all been sent cease and desist letters stating that you cannot create these peptides in these settings anymore. It's for research purposes only. And the way around it is these research companies are still able to sell them manufacturing wise. They're able to do that. You are able to buy any of these peptides from these researching companies. Now, the problem is you don't even need a physician to do that.
That's crazy.
And that's where that's a problem.
Now, Doc, I know you brought up Jay a couple times.
Yeah.
And I know you have a lot of knowledge on a bunch of people that are like even pioneers in this space. Is there stuff that you could tell us or the listeners about Jay and some of the work that he's done and how he's influenced you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jay has been working with peptides, I think, for 25 years, since the early 2000s. And so when you want to talk about a guy who's been there, done that, seen it all, tried it all, I mean, this guy has injected higher doses of what normal people are using just to try it out. I mean, he's been a guinea pig. He's also worked with, I mean, I think some of the top names, Ben Greenfield, Huberman. I know many high-level athletes. To spend time with him and to work with him, it is tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Wow.
So he's put in the work, and he's got great protocols. He's really been a great pioneer in this space, and I think if you are going to get started learning from him, it would be a great first step. He's got a lot of very simple courses for maybe the more layman's. If you're a physician, I think for a physician getting started, it's a great place to get started. But, you know, the A4M seminars, the American Anti-Aging Association, 4A, A4M, that's what they call it, with, you know, Dr. William Seeds and a lot of other providers who really want to know the cellular chemistry and all of the biochemistry. That's where then I think you could jump more into as a provider. But just as a patient getting started, wanting to learn this, feeling more comfortable about using these, because there is a little bit of a barrier to peptides. Again, with understanding how to reconstitute them. And Jay talks about that in a lot of his courses, along with all the other peptides that he likes to promote. But I like Jay because he's done it himself, so he gets to feel the other effects that these peptides are doing, other than just what we think they are. So again, we think about how Melanotan 2 was this, you know, make you tan, it's going to make you tan. And he's using it, and he's like, dude, I've never felt more grounded and like having this state of consciousness than I've ever felt ever. He's like, it's one of my favorite peptides. And you would never have thought of that. You would have thought, oh, it's just going to make you tan. Like, you know, you would have never known that. So being able to hear from him in his courses and just everything that he talks about, I do highly recommend Jay. He's partnered with this company, I think it's called Limitless, where it creates peptides, and you can buy from that website. And he's getting into, I know he's pushing hard to try to get a lot of these peptides more mainstream too, but he's doing it in the way that is helpful and safe. So it's not the compounding pharmacy route, which again, there's maybe eventually it's going to be going back to that route. But right now in the United States, you pretty much cannot get any peptides from the compounding pharmacies anymore. You have to get them from out of country.
And I know that's what you've done with the program and the company that you're building off to the side. I don't know if you want to talk about this now, that'd be awesome. But because we're going to go through a series of peptides here for ourselves, different purposes, of course. And Doc, do you just want to touch on that and some of the processes you had to take to not only get to the peptides, but then also the research backing and the processes?
Yeah, for sure. So the first company I ever worked with was TaylorMade Compounding, and they were a company, I believe, somewhere in the southern United States. But the gentleman, Ryan Smith, who created this company and was the CEO, he was very knowledgeable. You know, 5 years ago, it was the wild, wild west, man. You just had it all. And it's a compounding pharmacy, so people don't understand the rigorous regulations on a compounding pharmacy. It's not just them making it in the basement. You know, incredibly safe. So I thoroughly still believe that it's the pharmaceutical companies that killed the peptide industry. It's
Makes
not
sense.
that nothing wasn't safe. It was the pharmaceutical companies. So moving forward, a lot of those compounding pharmacies had to shut down because most of them were just solely peptide pharmacy companies. So nowadays, really the only two left that you can get from a compounding pharmacy are semaglutide and tirzepatide, which are the weight loss peptides. And now those are even starting to get pushed back. So we're going to be left with nothing here. Kind of a monopoly. Weird how that works. But luckily, Ryan, the CEO of TaylorMade Compound, who I used to work with.
Yeah.
And so it took some time for him, I believe, to set up shop. But now that he has a company outside the United States it can ship into, and super excited because it's taken me, 5 years now to, three-ish years to find another alternative after all of that got shut down. And, you know, it's exciting because I had a little glimpse into it when I was working with patients. We used it on a lot of patients. We used a lot of BPC on patients. That was probably one of my favorites for recovery and repair. There were some other ones that we started with. We did actually use Ozempic right away. We were one of the, I would say, first ones in Minnesota by far to kind of get that started. And back in the day, it's still expensive, but it was funny how, you know, back in the day, it was still like $600 to $800 a month to out of pocket use Ozempic. And now it's like over $1,000.
Wow.
And so peptides I think for a vial of TERS can be anywhere from $150 to $300 a month. So why are they hitting this so hard is because you're getting it for cheaper and you get to go up against the big guys. So that's the problem in the peptide industry right now is we're getting pushback from the higher ups, and hopefully they create a system where both win and we can at least have access to these peptides more widestream because they do have great effects. It'd be inhumane, in my opinion, to limit that from people who truly need it.
Because I know if you guys have been following the past, Doc has injured his shoulder, is doing pretty darn good now, but to introduce the healing effects for you, for me, trying to gain more muscle mass, I guess what are the steps? Because I know we've taken blood, so you're looking at different levels, which if like physician, you want to follow that. Do you want to talk through that?
For sure. So the company that I have on the side is called Nordic Integrative Health. I just call it Nordic. And really it's just a very simple concept. It's either telehealth or mobile. I'm still trying to figure out where that's going to be more at play. But right now, the main part of the side clinic is blood work, peptides, stem cells, and just being able to have access to those at a more affordable option. And the first step is always blood work. I want to make sure I look at the data. That's always going to be the most important. And then doing some trials of either peptides or testosterone, what other types of things to help manage hormones and health. We can do some stem cells, all that fun stuff. It's just making it easier for you to gain access to and making it more affordable, because too many times people go to try to get access to these and it's very expensive. And I just don't see the need for that. And so I've, through many years of work, have found ways to, I guess, hack that process to make it more affordable for people. And I hope to do so because I do want people to be able to go and do that comfortably without worry and have access to a lot of the crazy benefits of all of these properties like stem cells and exosomes and peptides. So yeah, usually if we're going to manage hormones, we take blood work right away. We want to make sure we look at the appropriate measures there. And then, we choose which ones we want to get started with. I have other providers that obviously manage that. But yeah, it's very easy. I come to your workplace. I come to your home. I take the blood. Very simple. Dr. Jace was confident enough in me to use the system. So yeah, I've been doing this now for 5 years, but this is the first step in kind of my journey into creating my own business on the side with this, and I'm super excited about that. So I hope to get many more clients interested in wanting to impact certain parts of their health and doing it in a way that's super simple, very affordable, and can help them ultimately overall.
For physicians listening as well, obviously, the cross-manage and hit Dr. Addy up, obviously, with that one. I can tell you from firsthand experience, without knowing as much into the nitty-gritty and the weeds with this, Doc has been very professional throughout the whole process, from drawing the blood to going through all the protective measures of being sanitary through the whole process, to be upfront in terms of communication, what research we know, what we don't necessarily know, but what we've seen with other patients in the past, and with his experience working with other physicians that have been working with this for years. It makes a lot of sense for the comfort level. For me, it was a no-brainer. It's something that I feel like we're moving in this direction of regenerative medicine, more than likely going to be the forefront of where the health field is going to be on. You are more so at the forefront of this, and I'm excited to see how that process plays for you, the company, and the amount of people you're going to help. So I appreciate and thank you for all you've done with that.
Thank you for those kind words. Yeah. But yeah, we have a lot of patients getting started. Some wanting to grow some muscle, some wanting to lose some fat, some wanting to grow hair, improve skin. Myself, I'm looking to recover. I know if you've been following the pod, I hurt my shoulder a while back, so I'm looking to recover and try to get some of my strength and my performance back after my shoulder injury. But yeah, I mean, I know that we're both excited to kind of get started, and yeah, we'll see what happens. It's gonna be fun.
So exciting. So Much the same as always. Obviously, if you have questions, comments, concerns, or anything, leave it in the comments below. We can make other subsequent videos more in depth on what we know even more further on some of these topics and peptides that we talked about today. But by all means, tune in. We have more of these peptide series coming up for a bunch of different topics and aspects that it can help out with in terms of human performance and physiology.
Yes.
And Doc is a wealth of knowledge, so we're just trying to break it up into chunks that's more digestible for most people. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, Doc, any other comments or leaving remark?
No, other than if you're going to use peptides, find a physician first. Don't do it yourself, and trust your body and know that the standard dosages, we haven't really said it yet. So there's definitely a great wealth of knowledge on how to use them, but everybody's different, and just don't be afraid to do a little more research yourself. But by no means be deterred at using these compounds. Peptides are very safe, very effective, and I believe are going to be one of the key future parts of healthcare for sure.
Oh, that's beautiful. So like always, subscribe below. We'll see you guys on the next one. Doc.
See you later.
Disclaimer, the content provided in this health podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast is solely at your own risk. The creators and hosts of this podcast are not responsible for any actions or decisions you may take based on the information presented.
Thanks for joining us on The Functional Code. For more evidence-based health insights, subscribe, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the functional code. Until next time, stay well, stay informed, and embrace the science of living well.